A very warm welcome on Byjus IAS. I am your host for the morning, Saturday morning. My name is Ayush Sanghi. I welcome you all. Hope you are having a wonderful morning today, and we are going to discuss today's newspaper in proper detail. Understanding certain news articles is important from prelims as well as mains point of view, and hence we have shortlisted certain articles which you will see in a while. 30th of March 2024 is today's newspaper, and let's look at the topics to be covered. So the first topic is discussed peace formula with India as Ukraine's foreign minister was here on a visit. Just a second, please. So, discussed peace formula with India, says Ukrainian foreign minister. This is something that has been stated. How do we look at it? Is what I'll make you understand. So, the first article focuses on GS2 international relations. Talking about international relations, again, we come to the Russia-Ukraine issue. The Russia-Ukraine issue is something that has been discussed time and again, but we'll be exploring a new angle. As you can see, this person who is the external affairs minister or the foreign minister of Ukraine was meeting Mr. Jaishankar on his visit to India. And the thing that they had to talk about, or the Ukrainian foreign minister was to discuss, is the peace formula. Now, when we talk about peace, what kind of a peace is that Ukraine wants to broker? Because Ukraine is that country who was constantly in tiff with Russia, as Ukraine was being supplied with immense arms ammunitions from the NATO members, whether it was the US or the European Union. So in the Ukraine-Russia war, in this entire war, what is supposed to be seen, what is supposed to be discussed, what is supposed to be understood is that Ukraine is not getting any further support or any other aid from its European counterparts or from other NATO members like the North American members. Looking at this, Russia is taking advantage, where Russia is trying to get into those boundaries of Ukraine which earlier it had not capitalized on or had not entered into. Ukraine's capital is Kiev, K-Y-I-V. Kiev is the name of the capital of Ukraine, and we'll be discussing about India-Ukrainian relations today, which would be a different angle, and I would also make you understand the challenges of this peace formula, something that we are discussing with them. Mr. Kuleba, who happens to be the foreign minister, described Russian campaign against Ukraine as a full-scale war, and we would expect no less. It's the truth. During his interactions with the Indian officials, which is why they want to broker with India, or they want India to intervene in the Russia-Ukraine relations. So the specific attention should be given to the peace formula during the official interaction between Kuleba and Jaishankar. We have to make sure that India-Ukraine relations, they go a long way on the basis of India's support to Ukraine in these trying times. Trying times are now, and they have been going on for the last 2 years since Russia's invasion on Ukraine, which was February 2022. It has been over 2 years. Now, let's discuss the relationship between India and Ukraine. Relationship between India and Ukraine. The first thing is diplomatic relations. When I talk about diplomatic relations, what I mean is that when did India recognize Ukraine as a sovereign democratic republic or as a sovereign independent country? Ukraine is a result of breakup of USSR in 1991 as a part of erstwhile Soviet. So in 1992, India established its relations with Ukraine when India recognized Ukraine as a sovereign republic, as a separate country. And during the same time, in 92-93, India started its diplomatic relations by starting an embassy in Kiev. This is something that happened. This established diplomatic relations with that country. And followed by that, Ukraine opened its mission in New Delhi, which means Ukraine established its consular in New Delhi, which was after India recognizing Ukraine as its ally, as its strategic ally. These are the diplomatic relations that we are talking about. Followed by that, the cooperation has been excessively democratic. The cooperation has been excessively friendly and amicable between the two countries. And India and Ukraine have had multiple areas of cooperation. Now, when I say multiple areas of cooperation, it is very, very important for us to understand what are these areas of cooperation. So, the first area of cooperation is the defense relation between two countries, defense relations between India and Ukraine. So, how does India support Ukraine and vice versa when it comes to defense? Do we provide the peacekeeping forces to Ukraine? So, what is meant by defense? Provision of peacekeeping forces to the other country, as India provided to Sri Lanka many decades back to fight the LTTE. Is that what the defense relations are? Are we providing infrastructural capabilities to them where we are investing in their country to make that country defense sound in terms of defense infrastructure? Or we are manufacturing for them and exporting what India knows the best? Like, for example, manufacturing aircrafts, manufacturing arms, ammunitions, tanks, and various other arsenal to fight a war. What exactly are the areas of defense cooperation between the two countries? Let's understand. So, the first thing is military technology. Military technology. Now, the point is that military technology, Ukraine has had access to Indian technology in terms of military ever since. So, this collateral, or you can say this bilateral relation between two countries has been on the basis of military technology and equipment that India has supplied to Ukraine and vice versa. Ukraine has also supplied to India. In terms of equipment, a notable thing is R-27 missile. R-27 missile is an air-to-air missile which is manufactured by Ukraine, and that is something which is supplied to India. And it is used by the Indian Air Force in Sukhoi, and it's an air-to-air missile. That is something that we give a business to Ukraine for. And this benefits both the countries. This is military prowess. So one of these things, this is where Russia accuses Ukraine of using Russian technology and trading Russian technology to other countries. So basically, it's Ukraine that had the Russian technology always, and now it is trading that Russian technology by making such things like these missiles, and it is trading to the other countries. So R-27 missile, and beyond that, as I discussed, mutual supply of weapons. When we talk about mutual supply of weapons, it is to bolster each other's military arsenal. That is what we are working towards, and they are working towards. So this relation is pretty dominant, and this relation is known for what we provide to them or what they provide to us. Followed by that, the third thing is bilateral trade. Bilateral trade. Now, whenever you study international relations, primarily there are two areas where you can form a good bilateral relationship or a relationship between two countries. The first area is that what benefit do I get from you in an economic fashion, in economic sense. That economic sense, relationship or benefit is again in two terms. So bilateral relationship can be established in the form of investments, cross-border investments, followed by trade of goods and services. GNS means goods and services. So how do we trade with that country is something which is supposed to be known. And this is something that provides benefit to that country. Why should I have a relationship with you? Because we do business together. Why should I develop a rapport with you? Because you invest in my country. You are investing in my country in terms of FDI, in terms of FII, cross-border investments are happening. So the first thing or the first stable metal foundation of a relationship is economic relationship, which happens on the basis of trade and investments. Followed by that, the second part of investment is what we understand. The second part of relationship is we understand on the basis of national security. If that country can help in my security point, if that country can assist me in the way we are dealing in security issues. So when we talk about trade, till 2021-22, before the war had started, the bilateral trade between both the countries, India and Ukraine, was roughly 3.9 billion US dollars. This used to be the trade. Now this trade has come down to under 2.5 billion dollars. It is less than 2.5 billion dollars, and it will further fall in this financial year. Indian exports to Ukraine have declined. Our exports to Ukraine have declined, and Ukrainian exports to India have also declined. That is something which is reflecting in this figure of reduction in trade. So the bilateral trade has reduced big time, and it is pretty obvious. The country is under attack. If a country is under attack, how do you expect that country to manufacture and export goods to the other countries? Are you able to understand? So bilateral trade. Bilateral trade was big enough. Now it has come down. It will further be reduced to half. This is something which is highly important. The fourth angle is cultural relationship. When I talk about cultural relationship or culture, culture is dependent upon soft power. Soft power depends upon art, depends upon music, depends upon creativity. That's a part of culture. Indian movies are extremely popular in Ukraine. Indian dances, Indian music are very, very popular in Ukraine, in Kiev. When we talk about soft power, there are so many Indian students who go to study medical in Ukrainian colleges. You might have heard of people going to Russia, just like they go to Russia to do MBBS, to study for their medical degree. Similarly, students also go to Ukraine. They go to Georgia as well to study MBBS. That is a part of big cultural cooperation and cultural relationship. So those students are helped, assisted, and they are helped by the Indian embassy in Ukraine. So they celebrate all the festivals. Our festivals are very popular in Ukraine, like Holi and Diwali. And plus, we give a lot of business to them in terms of student tourism. So that is the money being spent in their country. Student tourism is very high. These things establish cultural relationship. The very recent, which happened a couple of years back, were Indian dances being recognized by the Ukrainian Ministry of Culture. So that is something that basically establishes the cultural rapport between both the countries. This is something that has been happening. All these things, they establish the relationship between both the countries, India and Ukraine. On the basis of this relationship, Ukrainian foreign minister comes to India to request for a peace formula. So have a look at this. India and Ukraine engaged in discussions regarding a peace formula for the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And he is requesting the need for energizing India-Ukraine relations with new projects because they desperately want investments. Their economy is in shambles. This is what their expectation from India is. Now comes a bigger problem, and this is the newest angle that all of you should understand, are the challenges. Although India-Ukraine share almost 3 decades of rapport, 3 decades of relationship in terms of defense, in terms of culture, in terms of economy, in terms of multiple other things. But there are certain challenges because India is equally friendly, if not more, with Russia. Let's have a look at the challenges in this particular scenario. So when we look at the challenges are the war between Russia and Ukraine, the constant tiff between Russia and Ukraine because of Ukraine's arsenal and Ukraine's constant supply of military facility, military equipment by the NATO countries. Do you think that Russia will hold back if Ukraine keeps on getting these military supplies from the NATO countries? Obviously not. It will not hold back. So, military equipment overhaul. This is what is concerning Russia. Because this is not just an overhaul. Why would any country overhaul its military in times of war? Obviously to fight a war. They have to fight a war. So recent objections from Russia regarding Ukraine's overhaul of military equipment originally built and sold by Russia. Something that Russia had provided to them earlier, now that the same arsenal is being used against Russia. Highlight brewing tensions in the region. So this is a major challenge between both the countries. Followed by that, the second is Russia-Ukraine rift, which obviously has been there for the last 1 decade, since Crimea was annexed by Russia. Crimea used to be a portion which was under Ukrainian operation long back in 2014, till 2014, and Crimea was annexed by Russia. So it poses a potential dilemma for India. What stand should India take? Because India till date has not taken any stand, which means that we have not opted for any side. We are on the Russian side or the Ukrainian side. Either of the two sides would damage India's rapport with both the countries. Like NATO countries have taken a stand. They support Ukraine, they are against Russia, and they have imposed sanctions on them. This is a stand that India has not taken. And lastly, Indian Air Force collaboration. Now I'll tell you, you'll understand what is the challenge. The collaboration with Indian Air Force. Indian Air Force is providing certain services. Now, because Air Force is providing services, so those services are of military nature, which is concerning Russia. So if we do any kind of military association during these times with Ukraine, it would automatically be posed or it would automatically look or viewed as anti-Russia, which we don't want to come across as. So Indian Air Force ongoing collaboration with Ukraine to overhaul its fleet of AN-32s raises concerns and escalate tensions between Russia and Ukraine. So these are very, very important in terms of understanding that how the challenges would impact our relationship with both the countries. A very, very important article, in fact, a very interesting take that was taken in today's newspaper. I hope you understood the entire background. We have discussed India-Ukrainian relationship in detail since Ukraine's existence, since Ukraine turned into a sovereign country till now, and the challenges why India will not be able to help Ukraine in a specific fashion or in the fashion they desire us to help. First article of today. Coming to the second article, it is from the portion of economics, my favorite portion, and it can be used for GS3. So when we talk about economics and when we are talking in these times, especially this being an election year, so the month of March, we see how have we performed in the entire fiscal. So let's understand a fiscal year, also called as a financial year, ranges from 1st of April to 31st of March. This is typically the duration of a financial year in India. Some countries have the financial year overlapping with their calendar year. Calendar year is from 1st of January to 31st of December. Some countries have their financial year same as fiscal year. Here we are talking about the fiscal year, and the fiscal year from the 1st of April 2023 to 2024. These 12 months, the 12 months that we are presently in. So what would you say? That we are in fiscal year 2023-24. Normally it is stated like this, that we are in financial 23-24. Now, whenever you read articles in economics, the articles always state that 23-24's performance would be compared to the performance in the corresponding period of the previous year. It is never compared. You will not see comparison with last month or last quarter. You would mostly see comparison with the same month in the previous year, with the same quarter in the previous year, with previous year. So 2022, 2023, this was the previous year. This is the current year that we are in. So we are over here. In fact, we are ending the financial year. Today is the 30th of March. Tomorrow is the 31st of March, and we end the financial year. So in these years, what we are doing is we are comparing our fiscal deficit of 2022-23 with the present year 2023-24. Because we are in the month of March, so we obviously don't have the data for March, but we have the data from April to January, April to January, April to February. We have the data for 10 to 11 months. According to this data, the fiscal deficit that we had over here in 2022-23, the fiscal deficit that we had in this financial year, in this time from April to Jan 2022-23, was less as compared to the fiscal deficit that we have right now, ongoing in the present financial year. So present financial year, fiscal deficit is higher in comparison to the fiscal deficit that we had in the same time in the corresponding period of the previous financial year. This is something that is impacting us. This is something that is impacting us big time. So fiscal deficit has swelled, and this is contrary to the promises that were made by the finance minister herself, by Sitaraman, and various quarters of the government. Now I'll make you understand. Look at the headline. Fiscal deficit of Indian government has increased significantly from 11 lakh crore in January to 15 lakh crore by the end of February. So 15 lakh crore is the total fiscal deficit till the end of February. This we are calculating from April till February. It has increased to 15 lakh crores. It represents a rise from 63.6% to 86.5% of the revised target. So basically what you have to understand, that this year it has swelled to 86.5%. This is the total fiscal deficit which has been achieved till February. For the month of March, fiscal deficit can go beyond 100%, which is beyond the target of whatever fiscal deficit that we had decided, which is a lot, because fiscal deficit is a loss. I'll discuss the formula with you. Give me a minute. I just want to tell you that last year fiscal deficit was stood at 82.6% of the target by the end of February, but this year fiscal deficit is standing at 86.5%, the target, at the end of February. So when we are talking about the target of fiscal deficit, this is something that we have to be extremely careful about as to how the fiscal deficit is impacting us. Let's have a look at the formula for fiscal deficit. The formula for fiscal deficit. All right. So fiscal deficit is total expenditure net of revenue receipts plus non-debt creating capital receipts. Non-debt creating capital receipts. So total expenditure is what? Total expenditure is revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure minus revenue receipts plus non-debt creating capital receipts. Non-debt creating capital receipts are those that are receipts, but they are genuine receipts. They do not create a debt. I repeat, they do not create a debt. So it is not debt, it is not borrowing, It is not a loan. It is neither of these things. Neither debt, nor borrowing, nor loan, none of these things. These are non-debt creating capital receipts. Revenue receipts plus non-debt creating capital receipts. So total expenditure minus revenue receipts plus non-debt creating capital receipts is what gives us the fiscal deficit of that particular country. So when we talk about fiscal deficit, what is it that I'm trying to associate? What is it that I'm trying to make you understand is that if the fiscal deficit was fixed at a particular rate, something that you estimated that this much would be the fiscal deficit, let's say it would be 100. But looking at the present scenario, it would exceed 100, 102, or let's say 103. It would exceed this figure. It basically means that fiscal deficit is swelling and our losses are increasing. If our losses are increasing, it basically means that government of India is spending more money. The expenditure is much high. This would pose a problem of going against the FRBMA or the targets fixed by the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, FRBMA, which is also called as Debt Management. It is also termed as Debt Management and Fiscal Responsibility Act. So Debt Management and Fiscal Responsibility Act, this was after Mr. N.K. Singh had recommended that the earlier erstwhile FRBMA should be repealed and the new law should come into consideration. This is how it has been done. This is how it has been ascribed. So fiscal deficit is high or more than 100%. Whereas a target was to reduce fiscal deficit in this financial year, further reduce fiscal deficit in the next financial year. This is what has been happening. So please remember this formula of fiscal deficit. Followed by this, the next formula that you should remember is of primary deficit. Primary deficit is fiscal deficit minus interest payments. Fiscal deficit minus interest payments. This is primary deficit. Very, very important. This has been asked in the examination multiple times as to what exactly is the formula for primary deficit. So here we have excluded debt. And in primary deficit, we have excluded interest payments. This has also been done. This is something that you should remember. One more formula is, a popular formula is of revenue deficit, which comes as a part of revenue expenditure, netting of revenue receipts. So there are two types of receipts, revenue receipts and capital receipts. When we are calculating revenue deficit, so revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts is called revenue deficit, something that we have taken into account. These are the formulas that are given over here. This is for your effective revision that you can revise later. But here I want to give you another angle as to high fiscal deficit, or let's say increase in fiscal deficit. It contributes towards what? What does it contribute towards? So when I say that government of India is spending more money, the total expenditure is high, it basically means this expenditure is high because government of India is spending on development, it is spending on growth, it is spending on expansion, it is spending on diversification, it is spending on all of these things. The result of all of these things would be economic growth. It would contribute towards economic growth. We would grow economically. And this is something that would benefit us big time in the future. Every developing country, if it is spending high and has fiscal deficit, it basically means it is contributing towards future growth or future economic growth. So fiscal deficit have two primary effects on the economy. The first one being boosting economic growth in terms of development, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of creating employment, in terms of creating demand, all of these things. Businesses with opportunities to expand, generate revenue, contribute to government coffers, thereby reducing the fiscal deficit, but that is later. But when fiscal deficit increases, it increases economic growth too. Because it increases money supply, because it contributes towards growth, the following thing that happens because of boost of economic growth is inflationary pressures. Prolonged fiscal deficit indicates a government's inability to manage its growing expenditure, potentially leading to inflationary pressures. rising commodity prices, and increased production cost. Can result from excessive borrowing to offset the deficit. This contributes towards inflationary pressure. So look at this formula again. Total expenditure is higher than these receipts. Fiscal deficit is high. If the fiscal deficit rises, it means the losses are rising. When I say the losses are rising, those losses can be covered up by borrowing, which means you have to take a loan. Because you are spending more money and the fiscal deficit has risen, what does it state? What is the use? The problem is that if fiscal deficit keeps on rising, which means your expenditure is rising, that expenditure in order to be met requires money to be borrowed. And you will keep borrowing money. That will keep adding burden to the future generations because money that you have borrowed today, that has to be repaid in the future, that too with interest. So this is a very, very nice article. It says that factors contributing to February deficit spurt include transfer of around 2.15 lakh crore to the states. This much money has gone to the states, which is obviously an expenditure for the central government. And increase in capital expenditure. Capital expenditure has increased from 47,000 crore to 84,000 crore, almost double, which is why the fiscal deficit has risen in comparison to the last year. So this was the second article, a very, very important article and an interesting article. I hope you understood the points. Followed by this is the third article, which focuses on GS2 polity. This is also an interesting article. When we talk about bonds, now again, the same discussion has happened multiple times. Bonds, electoral bonds. Electoral bonds are unconstitutional. They go against Article 9, the spirit of fundamental right of Article 19, of Article 21. They are unconstitutional because they go against the Right to Information Act. You and I, both of us, do not know who contributed that money to each of the political parties. This is a bone of contention. So what is the problem? Look, electoral bonds being declared unconstitutional, whatever money has been contributed, that entire amount has been disclosed. You know which political party has got how much funding, who has donated that money, that detail has also come out, that who has donated how much money. But you don't know that are those shell companies, who are the promoters of those companies, etc., etc. This detail is not that well known. But still, we know certain things. Now the point is that this author over here, Mr. Arun Kumar, has gone one step ahead from the electoral bond scheme and the unearthings that have happened via electoral bond scheme. Let's have a look. I'll tell you, listen to me carefully. When I talk about electoral bonds, electoral bond scheme, since its application in 2018 up till 2023, until it was declared unconstitutional, roughly 12,000 crores of money has been received via issue of electoral bonds. In totality, all the bonds sold together. Out of 12,000 crores, roughly 50% has gone to one single political party. They have gone to a single political party, which is the ruling party, and the rest of the 50% are divided amidst all other parties, regional as well as national party. They are divided amidst all the other parties. This is a rough 50-50 calculation. Now, the point is that electoral bonds being discontinued and all other parties, for them also the funding has been stopped. Has this created any difference in the life of the people? Are political parties still concerned about what do people want? What are the requirements of the people? Would this affect the political party's mindset, or political party would still be corrupt? This is what we need to know. The electoral bond was considered to be an illegitimate mode of donation. If this is not there, then they would figure out another way of donation. And that is nothing but crony capitalism. Crony capitalism. Crony capitalism refers to the capitalist, the businessman of a particular country. What do? They basically keep donating money. The capitalists, they keep donating money to the political parties, and the political parties, instead of serving the people, instead of serving the citizens, what do? They try to serve the capitalist, the businesses. This is called as crony capitalism. Political parties favoring certain people. And this kind of mentality in politics during the election year is called as top-bottom approach or top-down model of development, where what is happening? The capitalist who donated the money to a political party to contest elections, and if that political party comes to power, that political party keeps on helping the same capitalist. Basically, what does it do? It creates a divide. It creates a divide between people and the capitalist. Now, this divide keeps on widening. The vulnerable sections, they keep on getting poor and the capitalists keep on getting rich. The divide keeps on widening. This is called as rising inequality, which is why India is considered to be, or India ranks very high on the World Inequality Index. In fact, some days back, it has been stated that inequality is higher than what it used to be during the times of British. This is something that happens, and it's a result of crony capitalism. And this is what the article focuses on. It goes a step ahead. We are not talking about bonds, but we are talking about illegitimate means of donations, use of that donation money in contesting elections, possibly winning elections, and then catering to the same people who have donated the money. What is it doing? It is hampering our life. It is hampering the life of citizens, people like you and me. We are still privileged, but there are millions of people who are living below the poverty line. They are still vulnerable and they keep on getting poorer. So bonds, big money, and an imperfect democracy. An apt name, apt title of this article. So the politics in India is hollowed out with elected leaders often serving the interest of those who finance their elections. Who finances the elections of politicians? It's the capitalist. Rather than representing the interest of their constituents. You are not thinking about your constituents, you're not thinking about citizens, you're not thinking about the very people who voted for you, but you're thinking about those people who have given the money to you. The gap between professed and actual practices undermines democracy, and this is going against the spirit of democracy. So discontinuation of electoral bonds is not the solution for upholding democratic values, as government increasingly serves vested interest rather than the people. This is the biggest problem. This is why the inequality is widening. Now, if you have a look at certain points that have been written in this article, I just want to highlight them, that there is no accountability of the government. Do we ask for answers? Do we ask for explanations from our representative, from the local MLA, from the local MP, among government personnel, and a prevalent feudal mindset further weakens democracy. This has weakened democracy, and still elections are fought on the basis of religion, which is a sorry state of affair, but it's fought on the basis of religion, race, caste, community, rather than how a candidate, how a representative has performed. So electoral bond scheme, despite its intentions, facilitated the flow of funds to political parties for various purposes. It was to contest elections, but beyond elections, it was favoritism, escape from prosecution, and investment for future benefits. This used to be a part of crony capitalism. But since they have been discontinued, so now the money would go in a different fashion, which is top-down model of development resulting in resources in being preempted by the elite. And this exacerbates disparities and marginalizes vulnerable sections of society. This is what has been happening today. So this entire article is important for GS2, polity, as well as it would be important for GS1. It's also a social issue. It's also a social issue that society, it differentiates, it widens the gap. The inequality rises. Coming to another article or in economics, what does this article focus upon? Let me make you understand. We are talking about government e-marketplace. This is a very effective portal, a very, very good portal. I'll tell you the use of this portal. So you must have seen marketplaces. You must have seen marketplaces where all of us go to shop. So we go on Amazon, we go on Flipkart, we go on multiple platforms to be able to shop, Myntra, Meesho, etc. So that's a marketplace. Similarly, there's a marketplace for the government departments, for the government ministries. So marketplace, right? This is the market. This market, the suppliers are private players. Like I can be a supplier in this market, which means that I can go to a marketplace to offer my services. These services are demanded by various government departments. Various government departments would demand these services. This is the entire point. So what used to happen earlier, even at this particular stage, basic government item, basic day-to-day items, items like what? Items like tea bags, stationery, furniture, fire extinguishers, bulb, staple pens, pencils. All these are basic day-to-day things. Printer, paper of that printer, very basic things. These things had huge amounts of corruption. People used to just get these things approved. They used to be bought from an external vendor, and then you did not know where those things vanished, whether those things came or not. If you have shown that you have bought, let's say, 100 pens, but only 30 pens have come into the office. Are you getting the point? So by nature, we are corrupt. In order to solve that level of corruption in the government departments where you are procuring stuff for the people, for the staff, for the office of the government or inside the government, what did the government do? What did the ruling party do? It basically introduced it it made it transparent. It made an online marketplace called as Government e-Marketplace. Now, whenever the government department requires any good or any service, it has to apply in this marketplace. Online. When you apply in this marketplace, the listed private players would supply the good and it would come to that particular department. Now the corruption has reduced a lot. It has reduced big time. You'll ask why? How has it reduced? Because now people are afraid of getting caught. As soon as you raise a request, your name will go. And if you keep on raising multiple requests, what would happen? Your name will be flagged. Why do you need so many pens? Why do you need so many tea bags? Why do you need consistent furniture? Why do you need so many printers or paper printers? So all of these things come over here. So this is a transparent monitoring system in order to make sure that there is no wastage as well as leakage. So it plans to introduce a transparent monitoring mechanism to assess the progress of work, contracts bid, out, open the platform. So this is something that you need to know. What is the progress of work? So expansion plans for GEM. Earlier GEM, this marketplace used to have limited products. Like I told you, it used to have stationery, it used to have day-to-day items. Now this marketplace, they are planning to widen this marketplace. Online platform for public procurement, you are procuring from the public. It aims to extend its services. More services can be availed by the government to include work contracts for construction and building projects. So construction and building projects would also be routed via this GEM. So again, that backdoor entry, that under the table entry, this would be stopped. Now this is a broader reboot of GEM, that now GEM is not only providing certain day-to-day tangible products, but it is also providing wider products like construction services and building projects. These things would be done. So the online interface is going through a revamp. This will enable departments, states and local bodies to customize micro procurement portals with multilingual interfaces. This is what is happening. It would benefit the contractors who are genuine contractors who can do the work properly. Including work contracts on GEM would streamline the tendering process, how the tenders have to be given, and the tender would be allotted to the highest bidder, the person who has bidded the best in the best interest of the government. Efficient payment system, this would also be transparent. Post-contract management features. It also aims to incorporate post-contract management features like the services which are to be provided after the job has been done. So this is Government e-Marketplace, a very, very effective place in order to be able to provide the services which are required for any person in the government. Even when you are, let's say you are sitting in an office. In an office, you require hundreds of things on a daily basis. How do you procure them? Because it's a private office, everything is regulated and funds are limited, or rather I should say funds are accounted. Within the government, funds are not accounted because it is not your money. It is not anyone. It is taxpayers' money that is being spent. So you are not bothered. In order to streamline it, it has been made very, very transparent, and you keep adding items to that marketplace, which would be highly, heavily, very, very useful for every single person who is about to enter that particular criteria of placing an order. You yourself think if you are placing an order on a government marketplace, you would take a little one step back. Why? Because you know that your name is going. Tomorrow, if there is an inquiry, it will be asked, why did you need so many things? When there is an audit, it would be required you to disclose everything. And that is something that has to be stopped. So this is revamp of online interface, rapid growth, benefits of including work contracts. That work contracts, it would streamline the tendering process, plus the payment process, plus the service process. All of these things would be done. They are highly, highly, highly important. So these were the important articles about about today's newspaper. You can read about GEM over here. This is something that I have explained. So there are certain prelims bites in today's newspaper important for prelims. As you know, that Indian Navy assists ships of other countries if they are a victim of piracy, the pirates in the sea, pirates of the Arabian Sea, not pirates of the Caribbean, but pirates of the Arabian Sea. Indian ships, they come to the rescue of those ships that have been under the attack of pirates. Now here, there's a notorious country by the name of Somalia. This is Somalia. And I think there's a TV series now which is there on Hotstar with the same name. It shows Somalia. So two Indian Navy ships, remember the names, INS Sumedha and INS Trishul, deployed in the Arabian Sea for maritime security operations, intercepted Al-Kambar or A1 Kambar following inputs of a potential piracy incident. Now this particular ship, it's a fishing vessel and it's a Iranian fishing vessel. So we are assisting Iranian fishing vessel to be freed from the pirates. And this is being done by our very own Navy, the Indian Navy, these two beautiful ships. This incident is a part of a series of piracy incidents in the Arabian Sea and off the coast of Somalia in recent months. This has been happening. So Somalian people are notorious for this particular thing where they get in control or they steal things which are there in the ship. So they don't even need the ship for the entire duration. They will steal it for that particular whatever it possesses, right? So this is important for prelims. Look at this particular map of Africa. This is eastern part of Africa, also called as the Horn of Africa. Horn of Africa has 4 countries. Please write in the comment section which are those 4 countries. There are certain mains questions that you need to do, that you need to revise. Discuss the evolving dynamics of India-Ukraine relations in the context of defense cooperation, trade and cultural exchanges. A very, very effective question in today's day and age, might be asked in this year's mains. So it talks specifically about defense cooperation, trade and cultural exchanges. Please write an answer in about 150 words. This is for 10 marks. Question number 2. Analyzing the concept of fiscal deficit and its implications on the economy, critically examine the factors contributing to India's fiscal deficit trajectory in recent years. So India's fiscal deficit, if you talk about the COVID year 2021, fiscal deficit was very high, reached to almost 9%, in fact greater than 9%. Then after that, the focus was to keep reducing fiscal deficit every year. So 21-22 it reduced, 22-23 it further reduced, 23-24 it is higher than last year. It is little higher than last year. So here we have missed our fiscal deficit target. Although according to the finance minister, the target set by finance minister for the end of 2024-25 was to get the fiscal deficit down to 5.1% of GDP. So we are not close to this. In fact, our fiscal deficit has increased. So you can frame the answer on this basis and you can write it in 150 words about how the fiscal deficit is looking in this particular sense. All right, guys. So that would be all. This was today's newspaper. I hope you understood and enjoyed the lecture. Tell me in the comment section What all more things on analysis would you like to hear? Would you like to listen, or would you like me to analyze? That would be all. Signing off. Thank you so much. Bye everyone. Take care and all the best.